Aperture.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paul, the new school, Aperture, for inviting us all. Thank you for being here. My work has been lived and reported over 27 years, and you're not going to see many pictures of drugs being used. Rather, it's work about sexual violence, trauma, and how that is connected to drug addiction and mental illness. So I'm just going to walk you through, kind of compressing 27 years into 10 minutes. In 1990, I was in London. I was a young photographer. I went to London really because I had a free place to stay, and around for a couple weeks as her and other teenagers, young adults would go in and out of shelters, drop-in centers. She panhandled on the street. Sometimes she was with her friends. This was the girl Esther, who had a pet rat and who had these giant scars on either side of her face. I knew that Kathy was running from something, that she was fearful. I wasn't really sure what that was. She spent her money that she would collect panhandling to buy crack. And at that time in England, crack use was very rare. It's also really expensive to get. So if you think 1990 New York, crack is going for maybe $2.50 a hit, or basically the equivalent blowjob if you're a woman on the street. And in England, it was about $40. So she had to work really hard to get a hit of crack. And she would use it in a parking garage. So over time, she started to reveal to me some of the violence that had been committed against her. This is a knife wound. She had two kind of central perpetrators that were orbiting her and dictating her life. They were forcing her to prostitute herself. There was child pornography involved. And the story got deeper and deeper and more complex, but I didn't really know the details then. So I took these pictures and I went home. And I gave her my phone number, I gave her my address, I said she could write me. I pitched the story, whatever kind of story it was, just kind of street kids in London, to some magazines, and they didn't want them, and then I just put the pictures in my closet and sort of forgot about the pictures. So she would write me, and she would send me some pages from her diary, which she was keeping contemporaneously. And she sent me a big envelope of medical records, which were emergency room visits that were just kind of detailing, you know, the history of her life. She had been adopted by a white family in the south of England when she was 2. Family might have been, was. I came to a certain conclusion about the family's involvement in her violence and criminality. But in any case, she was also running from her family. And so in 1993, on the advice of Scotland Yard, she fled England. Basically, Scotland Yard said that they couldn't protect her from these perpetrators. She had stolen damaging evidence that implicated them in some very serious crimes. And she fled to New York, and she basically fled to me. At that time, you know, early 90s, hands up for people who were living in New York then. Okay, so a few of you remember crack was on just about every street corner. It was a wretched situation. Crack abuse often led to HIV because of the life that you were living to get the drug. And so I kind of saw her future as crack addict at $2.50 a hit, HIV, most likely prison. In any case, she came to New York, and she realized very quickly that to get help, she needed to be a minor, and she checked in as a woman, a teenager named Kimberly Stevens, and she became a ward of New York State and started doing art therapy for her trauma. Her trauma basically consisted of massive flashbacks and nightmares, and she drew these pictures of her life and of her flashbacks and her nightmares. These are some of the places that have helped her over time. I stopped photographing her. I felt that she doesn't need photographs, she needs help, and I tried to do my best over all these years to help her navigate the mental health system in New York City and just life here. And so I would often check her into all these places and became a de facto next of kin. At some point in time, inevitably, she was going to enter the criminal justice system, and in 2007, she was busted on some petty little drug charge and was sent to Rikers Island and tried to kill herself twice in Rikers Island. Anyone here know people who's been to Rikers Island? Okay, so for those of you here, you know the kind of trauma of that place, that if you go into that place, already a victim of severe sexual violence or trauma, you are not going to come out better. Most likely you're going to come out far worse, which was the situation with her. So she went in, she pled guilty to a drug charge with the promise that she would get treatment. But then she tried to kill herself, and so in the eyes of the authorities, she was no longer just an addict, she was a mental health case, and they could not find a place that would treat both addiction and mental health. And this continues to be a major problem in New York City and the rest of the country. So she spent 6 months in Rikers Island waiting for a place. I rented a boat to take these pictures. She got out of Rikers Island, she had HIV before she went in. She was placed in a little one-room apartment that people with HIV are allowed to get. It was one of the benefits of the ACT UP movement, and one of their victories that they were able to insist on housing for HIV patients. So then I started photographing her again because I thought she was going to die. And I thought, oh my God, I've known this woman for so many years and I have no pictures of her. But at no point in time did I ever think of making this work public. So I took a lot of pictures of her, I started recording her, I started videotaping her. And in the hospital, I would bring her to emergency rooms. And then at some point in time, she wrote her own book about her own life story. And I got a residency for people working on sexual violence in 2014. And I took all of her material and all of my material and put it together and made a framework and hired a designer who met with her several times, and we agreed that we would make a collaborative work. And so it's her drawings, her writings, my pictures. She was a photo editor. She approved every single thing in the book. We would talk about what pictures we wanted, what pictures we didn't want. And through this process, I was concerned that maybe she doesn't really want to do this, right? And so I would insist that she write down for me why she wanted to do this work. And part of that is published in the book. And I'm almost done. This is a picture in Central Park where she would go to find peace and also sometimes go to contemplate suicide. And we made this picture together. I started putting her drawings on my pictures. We used the documents to drive the narrative. It's her in my apartment. I went back to England to fill out some of the scenes. So this is a phone booth she used to run away to from her home and call for help, and this phone booth is still there. St. Luke's Hospital. One of the things that was my responsibility to drive the narrative, what did I want the viewer to get from these pictures? And what I wanted them to get was that she was someone seeking love, security, safety, justice. And so I would ask her if she encountered people who were nice to her. And she wrote this down as 2 encounters on the subway of people who treated her like a human being for a moment. Our letters became text messages over time. So this is a text message, this is her selfie. This picture of her I always liked. And this is an entry to her diary. This is the last frame.